Welcome to Stargating.
Welcome to Stargating.
What is
I am Tamara, and this is
I am Chris.
Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris. This is officially our second go-round of Stargating, but here is to better equipment and more time.
Better equipment. Woo!
That's us clinking our plastic wine glasses together.
Yes, we're discussing keeping up the old ones. We haven't decided yet. We may or may not. They're like almost impossible to listen to, so these are way better. And I'm excited to go forward and see how our new hot takes differ from our hot takes of a year ago.
Yeah. And today we are discussing the 1994 film Stargate, directed by Roland Emmerich, written by Emmerich and Dean Devlin of Leverage fame.
Ah, I love Leverage.
Also Geostorm.
Geostorm!
But they were the hot pair that would later give us such hit films as Independence Day, Godzilla. I think they still work together on that Caveman movie, but then they split up.
Oh, that Caveman movie. Did that come out?
Yeah, 10,000 BC or something. It was really bad.
Oh, man. Wait, is that the one where the kid is a caveman? Like he's part genetically caveman? You should.
No. That's that new film. This one was one from like the early 2000s.
Oh,
nobody saw it. You don't have to worry about it.
Oh, okay. Well, I kind of want to watch that one where the kid has caveman DNA, but let's not get into that. We are talking about the movie, and I'm excited because that means that I made Chris rewatch it with me.
Yeah. For like the second time in, I guess,
like a year
and a half.
This time I took notes.
Oh, I took plenty of notes too. Don't you worry about notes. I got notes coming out of me. To give you everybody a bit of a rundown on our show, Stargating, we are going to be going through the Stargate franchise episode by episode, starting, of course, with the film and then moving on to SG-1. And then if we achieve any sort of popularity or any sort of sustainability, maybe Atlantis and Universe. And I hope we're long dead before we have to get to that web series.
I would be down to do all of those. Even though we only watched that one episode of the web series and then we stopped, I would be down to do all of them. I'd be okay with it. And the movies. We're doing the movies.
Yes, there are later period movies that I did see. Yes.
This is the first Stargate movie entitled Stargate.
Yeah. This movie was a huge hit, actually. I remember the summer it came out. It was a year after Jurassic Park, and this was kind of like the next big summer hit of 94. This
was a hit.
Yeah, this was a big movie of the time. Which is interesting because looking back on it, it looks really cheap. Like, hey. I just mean in terms of like it was.
Was this that controversial opinion you brought up? Because that's rude.
No, that's something else entirely. We'll get to that. But no, I just mean like it's a movie that's very adept at hiding its budget because they use the Cheyenne Mountain location, or I think it's like Colorado Springs Mountain or something in the movie. They spend basically the whole first act of the movie there, so they really use that location. And then the rest of the movie is just a lot of desert and a lot of matte paintings and some minimal sets.
We watched the extended version, and I think the extended version was unnecessary. I actually was like sitting there at one point going, oh, we've still got like an hour left. Like
the movie does drag.
Yeah, it does drag in places. So I think maybe that extended cut wasn't necessary, especially since the kind of scenes that it added were like you could tell they were scenes they added. But like I love this movie.
Yeah, I mean I'm not a hater. I don't like it's got some really good merits. So why don't you take us through the film? Roland Emmerich directed, 1994, stars Kurt Russell, James Spader, and French Stewart.
Who's French Stewart?
He's one of the soldiers.
Okay. Oh, the one that you were surprised wasn't dead at the end.
Yes, very surprised.
Okay, so the movie opens on a planet with a nomadic human group of some kind.
They're like tribal people.
And a big spaceship comes down, and one of the tribal people is like, oh, I'm interested in this bright light, goes over to it, and is immediately kidnapped, because that's what you get for going close to bright lights.
Yeah, that never works out. There's a DC villain that has the exact same origin story, where he was a caveman, and there was a meteor that fell to Earth, and while his whole tribe ran away, he like cuddled up next to it and went to sleep, and then woke up an immortal.
Oh, well, good for him. That's pretty great. I personally would not cuddle up next to something that was big and glowing if I didn't know what it was. Like a nightlight, sure, or like a glowing blanket, maybe, but like not a spaceship. So, yeah, so he gets taken, and that is one of the
first extended, of like 3 openings.
It's got 3 openings because it's got these extended scenes in it. In the original opening, it starts with the second scene of the movie, which is where they find the Stargate itself in, was it 1944?
No, it's like the 20s. It is. It's seriously like the 20s.
But the thing...
No, I'm pretty sure it was the 1920s. I'll look it up. But...
Okay.
Because she mentions...
she's like a little girl.
It was found outside of Giza. Because they find... First, it's the little girl, and she's walking, and then she finds the necklace.
And then, because she's on a archaeological dig with her father and a bunch of appropriately cast diggers, and it's pretty good for, like, setting up your main MacGuffin, which is the Stargate itself. The Stargate is really a MacGuffin. It doesn't really get
1928, by the way. Egypt, 1928.
Oh, it was 1928. I don't know why I said 44. I thought I saw 44. But it's in 1928. So she finds this necklace, and she picks it up, and she grabs it, and she's like, this is mine now, even though... Well, I mean, I guess that is how archaeology was done in the 20s.
The white people just got to take what they want?
Yeah, this is mine now. I found this on the ground, and this is mine now. That's how it works, right? When I find something on the ground and pick it up, it becomes mine. Sometimes even when I don't find it. So she takes it, and then they find the Stargate itself, and they pull it up. And then in another extended scene underneath of the Stargate, they find a fossilized jackal-headed thing.
Well, there's 2. There's the jackal-headed, because they show it later when O'Neill is all like, oh, we found these... what could just essentially be carvings, so we should be really afraid all of a sudden.
Well, like, that's supposed to be why
that's kind of how the military
is so up their own butt.
It's a very 90s idea of the military, where they were kind of like bloated and up their own butt, and unnecessarily aggressive. It's very pre-9/11 thinking.
But yeah, so and I had in my notes, because that opening, the title card sequence that happens before all the other stuff happens, that theme song gets me right in the feels.
Oh yeah, I have a surprise for you about the theme song. Oh, I'm not sure if I should get into it right now or not, but...
Sure, why not? Let's do it.
Well, yeah, because it does open with the kind of the close-up... It's a very... I guess at the time it was new, but it is a little bit cliched of an opening now, where you're just running credits over the close-up of some kind of mysterious object, and then you pull back and you go, oh, it was a thing.
Yeah.
Or in this case,
it was Mummy, too.
Yeah, they do that quite a bit. But the theme song... Right, yeah, I was looking into it because I was like, oh, this music is really great, and this theme song has been used quite a bit. It was made by David Arnold. So, I was doing a little bit of research on the IMDb trivia, and it was saying that David Arnold was actually a record store clerk at the time that this movie was being made, and he was recommended to Emmerich as a composer. Emmerich was very nervous about bringing him on, but they did, and the results spoke for themselves. You know, the movie, I would say, has a top-to-bottom fantastic score.
Oh, yeah, it's A+.
Yeah. Any other problems I may have with the movie, they're not with the music at all. The music is wonderful. David Arnold later went on to do some of the later Bond films. He did, he did Casino Royale and Die Another Day.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but that's not the big thing. The big thing was I looked into it, and do you know what he composed?
No, I obviously don't. You're setting me up for what did he compose?
Just the theme to one of your favorite shows, Sherlock.
What?
Yeah, him and Michael Price apparently composed the opening theme and most of the music for the first pilot for Sherlock.
Oh my god! That's so exciting! I love Sherlock. Sherlock BBC, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Sherlock BBC.
Yeah, no, I had to double check that it wasn't the Guy Ritchie films or even the ABC or whatever that show is that stars the dude from Hackers.
Well, I also love the Guy Ritchie films, so either of those would have worked.
Still, no, good on him. David Arnold apparently went from being a record store clerk, and this movie was his big breakout hit. And, scoring the Bond films is no joke. He did Casino Royale, and I believe he did Quantum of Solace as well.
Wow. Good for him. Because this score is, like, really good. So the idea that he was working as a record clerk was...
Emmerich specifically points out how proud he is of the score for this film because of how many times it was later used in trailers for other movies.
Wow.
That's very common. They did
much.
That. They also do that with the musical score from Aliens, which is that militaristic score. It was used in so many trailers in the 90s.
So good. It hit me right in the feels. The extended cut has 2 openings, as we've already discussed. I just wanted to say that I think the Stargate itself is an excellent piece of sci-fi tech. Like, when they pull it up, and it's just this really neat, elaborate ring with all these symbols on it, and they're looking at it.
It's an inventive idea.
And I really like how it also does for really good framing, because it's this really, like, large, ominous-looking thing, even without it on. Like, and then when it's turned on, it's like you see that moment where they all, like, drop it, and one guy drops a pencil out of his mouth, and everyone's, like, kind of in awe, and it's like, oh, wow, that's...
They set up that pencil for, like, 2 minutes. It's in that guy's mouth.
I know, and then he drops it. Well, it's fine. It's not necessary, but it's fine. Then we cut to our third opening, which is on our main character, because he really is. He's our main character, Daniel Jackson. Who is a linguist and a multiple PhD. I mean, Dr.
I think
Jackson.
This is more expanded on in the show. I don't think they say specifically that he has multiple PhDs, but you could kind of assume.
Yeah, I mean, he's teaching lecture at some kind of hotel. I think was it a hotel? I think it was a hotel.
No, it was an exhibit. It was some kind of conference. The sign out front I specifically noted was not advertising him, so he was not the main draw of all those people being there. So he may have just been the warm-up act, not. In which case it's really terrible news who forever was following him.
Yeah, because they all leave. So he's telling his whole theory where he's like, I don't think that the ancient Egyptians made the pyramids. Which, if anybody on the internet tells me that, I think they're dumb.
Well, he was saying specifically the 4th dynasty pharaohs didn't build the pyramids.
Yeah, he said they didn't do it.
He was not saying that, like, aliens made the pyramids.
Yeah, that's a joke that one of the guys who's there participating in the lecture makes. He's like, who do you think made it? Martians? And he's like, ah. And then in the show, I'm pretty sure that he explicitly says a couple times that they laughed him out of academia because specifically he thought that it was aliens that made the pyramids. I'm pretty sure they make that canon in the show. So I was like, oh, okay, so he never said that it was aliens, which makes way more sense. But, like, they basically laugh at him.
He has no idea.
And he says that a well-known discovery within the Great Pyramid of Giza is fake, and that's when they all kind of just start leaving. They're like,
well, it's because I also think this time watching it, I kind of picked up on the instantaneous disgust people would have if somebody showed up and said that, like, the 4th dynasty pharaohs didn't build the pyramids. It would be like somebody showing up today and saying that steel workers in the 1970s did not build the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, there's so much documented evidence. Shut your mouth.
Like, you're a crazy person.
Which I guess goes into the screenplay a little bit. Like, they probably didn't do too much, like, in-depth research. They just had this idea that, hey, the pyramids were alien landing pads for spaceships, so let's run with it.
Yeah, so they probably, like... Do you think they did any research into, like, the people that they name drop?
I think the thing about this script was Emmerich and Devlin wrote it together in film school. I remember reading something specifically about how this was at least a concept that they had pitched back and forth quite often, and Dean Devlin wanted to create a Lawrence of Arabia in space. Which is like, yeah, we get it. You guys both got high and watched Star Wars.
Okay, well, let's not get too into your Star Wars take just yet. We haven't even gotten to the space part yet. So,
You know what? I just want to say, like, I genuinely like this setup in the first act.
You do?
Yeah, this first act I like a lot.
Okay. She said suspiciously. I'm narrowing my eyes at him. You can't see it, but I am.
It's very intense and sexual.
Why are you going to be like that? Okay. So, Catherine. So, he's doing his lecture, and this old lady comes in and is watching his lecture. And this lady is Catherine, who is the little girl from our second opening in the extended cut. But she is now, like, an A+ old lady, and, like, actually looks like an old lady, which is really great. Like,
well, she's played by Vivica Lindfors, who, according to the gods at IMDb, is a Swedish-born actress whose station career in the U.S. and Sweden spanned more than half a century. Oh, she worked in Hollywood in 1946 with people like Greta Garbo and Ingrid Bergman. So she has some pedigree. And
she's in this subpar movie. I'm not going to say it's a good movie. Like, I would never say it's a good movie, but I thoroughly enjoy it and like to watch it. So, you know. And I like the aesthetic. I think a lot of it is the aesthetic. I had a real Egyptian bug when I was a kid, so... You know, I think everybody does, but yeah. She shows up, she watches his lecture, she watches as everybody just walks out of the lecture, and poor Daniel is just like, is there a lunch or something? And it's like, oh, no, honey, they're leaving.
He has like a pathetic, having to go out in the rain with an umbrella scene.
Yeah, this movie, for Daniel Jackson being the main character, this movie really likes to shit on him.
Well, it's the very... If you kind of start your hero from zero, you have nowhere to go but building him up, I guess, is the
But also,
point.
screw you, nerd.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, he's clearly portrayed as, like, a big nerdy
Well, like, he calls him
idiot.
A dweeb later. Kurt Russell calls him a dweeb later. And it's like, I guess you guys wouldn't know what dweeb is. And it's like, no, obviously they wouldn't know what a dweeb is, you dweeb. Anyway.
So the mysterious car, the lady with the dossier who
yeah,
wants to recruit him.
she pulls him into her car and she's like, hey, you've been evicted from your apartment. You have no parents. You just have foster parents. Because he's very clear to correct her when she's like, these are your parents, right? And he's just like, foster parents. But it's also kind of like, was she trying to threaten his parents?
I noticed, too, that photograph was from, like, the fucking 1950s.
Oh, it definitely was.
Which is like... Okay, James Spader is not that old, especially in 94. Like, James Spader was like a kid in the 70s, you know?
Yeah, no, it's bad. But,
they're like holding him and, like, I don't know, he's got like a little boy blue dress on or something.
Yeah, it was a weird outfit that the kid him was supposedly wearing. But yeah.
So she recruits him to the project, which...
By basically saying you have nothing going on, so you can help me. And it's like, that's not, if I were trying to get somebody to join my super secret project, that's not how I would pitch it. I would not pitch it as, well, what else have you got going on? You know, you don't have, you just got laughed out of your lecture and you got evicted. Everything you own is in those 2 bags. And it's like, if I'm trying to get this guy to work for me and he's being a little bit resistant, I'm not just gonna neg him until he says yes.
Yeah, I have some questions about the previous 70 years or 50 years of why the Stargate suddenly now has this big project based around it. I'm sure they're answered in that god-awful web series that is a prequel that is so horribly acted that you can't physically sit through it.
We did. We sat through the first 2 episodes, and then we stopped because it was too much. So she gets him in the car. She convinces him to join the project through negging, which doesn't work, but okay. And he's like, okay, let's go to this super secret military base. He gets there, and they walk him in, and they're like, hey, we're doing, like, this is like orientation day.
I guess it's...
Right?
Like, I guess this it's a different location than the show, right? Because the show is Cheyenne Mountain, right?
Yeah, I think
and
it's
this is Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
They're both in Colorado.
Which means that at some point they moved a giant Stargate.
Well, I think that's the point, is that they, at the start of the next episode, or not the next episode, but the first episode of the TV show, it's like in fucking storage.
Yeah, like they put it away because they're like, oh, there's no point in using it anymore. But they head to the mountain. This is like orientation day, right? Like he's just being walked through the facility for the first time, and like Catherine is like introducing him to his new coworkers, and he sees this blackboard with the translation, and he walks up to it and he starts retranslating it. And it's supposed to show that, like, he's a super genius who knows what he's doing and linguist stuff. And he just kind of comes off like a dick. Because, like, the whole time he's like, oh, I don't even know why they reprint this guy's books anymore. And it's like, okay. And then he goes,
he does the Dr. House thing where he just, like, walks in. And
I have this in my notes, like, 3 times, where he has a lot in common with Dr. House in this first movie. Because, like, so he walks through, throughout the movie. Because not 1, but 2 times he has a Dr. House epiphany moment where he's like, oh my gosh, I saw this picture that's almost completely unrelated to whatever I was doing, and it's suddenly sparked inspiration in me that I know the answer to the question. And both times it's like he's trying to figure out, 1, what's on the Stargate around the outer track, and then 2, when he's trying to figure out the symbol to get back home for the point of origin, he has like a eureka, oh my god moment where he's like, oh shit, this is the answer, and it's from a completely unrelated picture. So I have that in my notes that it happens
He's very
twice.
Dr. House like. Because he immediately walks in and he's like, what do they call it, the door to heaven?
Initially, he's like, no, this isn't door to heaven, it's Stargate.
Which is like, first off, what's the initial idea around the military dossier that these people receive, where it's like, may or may not contain a gateway to the afterlife?
I don't think that's...
If I read something that says it's the door to heaven, I'm like, okay, that thing's gonna just kill me.
Yeah, I don't know. They managed to pay people enough. They're the government. It's a secret black ops.
Yeah, like I said, I'm confused about how it spent 50 years being passed around the American government to this point, where this point suddenly the moment, like, I guess it's because the old lady, Catherine, she was maybe at her wit's end because, like, Richard Kind sure wasn't coming up with the answer. Fucking, what's it?
Bing Bong!
Bing Bong?
It's Bing Bong from Inside Out, and also a mayor from Insert Show Here. He's been a mayor in Leverage. He was, hilariously, he's a mayor. He mentions when he's Bing Bong, he's practically the mayor because it's an inside joke about how he plays a lot of mayors.
He's the mayor in Gotham, yeah.
He's the mayor in Gotham. He's just a mayor in
Richard
just a
Kind
lot of
is
stuff.
a treasure. Richard Kind is fantastically funny.
Yeah, I had in my notes here that Richard Kind, in a rare appearance, is not a mayor. But before that, we missed a part. We missed Kurt Russell's introduction.
Oh, yes, his sad,
his real sad introduction, where you show up and these 2 military officers show up to his house. His wife answers the door and she's like, yeah, you can go and try to talk to him if you want, because she's all like grizzled and sad because
that's
her
only
son's
presence
dead.
in this entire
That's her
film.
only line in the movie. They go upstairs and they see Kurt Russell and they're like, sir, you're being reactivated. And Kurt Russell says nothing. And I have a note here where it just says, Kurt Russell is far too handsome for that haircut. Because Kurt Russell is far too handsome for that opening haircut.
I have a similar note that says Kurt Russell is playing Snake Plissken with worse hair.
Oh no, he is. That's exactly what it is. It's Snake Plissken, but with worse hair. Oh, Kurt Russell. I feel so bad.
Kurt Russell's a fucking treasure. There's scenes in this movie, especially towards the end, though, when even though he's trying to play the straight-faced stoic bad guy, he's still, like, cracking lines that I'm like, you still got so much charisma.
Who, Kurt Russell? I didn't see him as trying to be a bad guy. I see him as more as, like, a tragic figure in the narrative.
He's the bad guy. He's the quote-unquote bad guy to James Spader's, more humanistic good guy, essentially,
I don't
right?
think it's necessarily being a
arc.
humanistic person to say, I don't think we should nuke this planet full of innocent people that don't understand how guns work and who have been mining as slaves for generations.
So, I really, like I said, I actually
Spoilers.
really like this first part. I like the mystery. I'm a sucker for that kind of, like,
Well, it feels like Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
anything
or
that feels like Indiana Jones is that's why I like National Treasure.
Some of the better episodes of Star Trek, where like a really great episode of Star Trek will start with a mystery, and then the solving of the mystery and the uncovering of the mystery becomes kind of the central point of the episode. It really feels like that, and also I was feeling like there was echoes of Contact, the film Contact, which I was surprised to learn came out 3 years later in '97.
Mm-hmm. Came out afterwards.
I'm sure the Sagan book was out before then, but yeah, it's just they kind of like, maybe the government can work towards something that's actually beneficial for mankind until the military comes in and starts, being...
Yeah, and then the military messes it up. Just like in this movie. I had down that the military is both the heroes and the bad guys. Because, like, they're like, we're going to nuke this planet full of a bunch of... Spoiler alert, they're going to nuke a planet full of a bunch of just normal people. But they're also like, oh, we saved the day by giving the native people here guns. Because that's what solves things, is giving people guns. And it's just... But back to my we'll get to that, because that's a later note. But yeah, so they show up and they reveal that Kurt Russell's son shot himself and died accidentally.
In a hilariously bad piece of ADR,
yes,
where it's
just
a long shot of the two guys walking to the car, and it's one voice, oh, that guy's really messed up. Other voice, his kid's dead.
Which
shot
they
himself
say
with his
later
own
in
gun.
the movie, so you could have just not put that in there and then had that been a big reveal at the end of the movie as to why he's so morose and ready to die. Which, I pointed this out to Chris, and apparently Chris did not realize this the first however many times he's watched this movie.
I did watch a lot as a kid.
But I pointed out to him that, like, yeah, because he said, well, why would they even reactivate this guy? And he goes, because he's suicidal, and he has nothing to live for. His job is to go there, bring the nuke, and then blow it up and kill himself.
That actually brings me to the next point in the movie, which is General West's total dismissal of O'Neill's feelings, because essentially what happens is Daniel Jackson figures it out. Daniel Jackson, he is going for water to refill his coffee pot.
Well, no, wait. First he figures out the retranslation.
Yeah, that's the
And then
thing,
they say, okay, well, you've done the retranslation. That's great. Here's more stuff.
At this point, they're translating the stone tablet that was placed on top of the Stargate after it was buried.
Yes.
Which contains inscriptions of essentially how to operate the Stargate.
Yeah, but they don't know that. So what they're doing is he's like, okay, I need to figure out what these symbols mean. So he's working on it. And right after he does the retranslation, all douchey and Mr. House-like, or Dr. House-like, he's like, oh, I'm doing it. And then Kurt Russell shows up with better hair. And he's like, this is all classified now. I'm in charge. Everything has to go through me. And they're like, okay, that's weird. I thought that we had, say over what happened. And he's like, no, not anymore. General West and I, I'm in control. And she's like, okay, well, that's great. So then it goes to, here's the stone tablet that was on top of the Stargate when it was buried. We have to translate this now.
Which Daniel Jackson doesn't know about the actual Stargate.
No, he does not know. They didn't tell him, which is completely understandable. I wouldn't tell him about it yet either. He's just a civilian dude who's coming in to do a translation. But he shows up, and he does it in basically like 14 days. And this has been like a 2-year project. And he's outside getting water to refill the coffee pot because he's been working long hours because I guess he doesn't really have anywhere else to go, so why not? And he goes outside, he gets it from the water fountain, and the military guy's like, oh, show me your badge, so he shows it to him. And then he looks back at the security guard's newspaper, and it has Orion on it. And he's like...
By the way...
Oh, and it's house moment number 1, right? I wrote down...
That security guard, by the way, has one of those movie jobs that I kind of secretly always want, which is obviously very highly paid for doing nothing. It's the same with the guy guarding the entrance to the Men in Black headquarters. Or
that guy gets paid a mint to just sit there.
Or it's just, or the dude who had to watch the desk in Twin Peaks: The Return, where his just entire job was just sitting on a desk for 24 hours, being like, yeah, let me just, I don't know, I'll fucking go on Reddit for an hour.
Yeah, or the twins in Hot Fuzz, where it's like their job is to just basically sit there in a town where zero crime happens and work the income desk. It's like, yeah, you know what? That's a mint job. You just sit there. You just read a book the whole time you're there. Anyway, he has his first of 2 house-like epiphanies where he's like, oh my god, it's Orion. And he holds the newspaper right up to the symbol, just in case you weren't sure.
If you see a symbol that's a hexagonal dude holding a bow and arrow, you're probably going to be like, maybe that's Orion.
Yeah, it's like in 2 years, these people couldn't figure it out, and he just like saw a picture. I also wrote down Daniel Jackson is a visual learner, because this is the first or second 2 times where a picture has made him be like, oh, Eureka! I have it. And it's like, okay, Daniel. So yeah, he figures it out and he goes, okay, these are coordinates. You need 6 dots. He does a pretty hilarious briefing where it's a bunch of military guys and then like 5 scientists. And he does this briefing where he goes, these are coordinates and you need 5 dots or 6 dots in your coordinates.
And the 7th dot is an orientation point, or like an
origin point.
Origin
yes.
point.
So he's like, these 7 things are directions, and this is how you would get to a different place. And they're like, oh, okay, and Bing Bong blabs. And is like, well, that's not on the device. And then everybody just looks at him like, what the fuck are you doing?
You gave it up, Richard Kind. Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you weren't going to tell him anyway. Like, you have a possibility to travel through time and space. And you're like, whatever. We're just going to fire this guy after we use him for 2. Nah. So they all give him, like, these dirty looks. And he's like, what device?
They're in such a rush to use this thing.
And that's when, yes, they are. And that's when you see this. Well, it's probably just been hemorrhaging money, right? It's been 2 years. And they were probably like, look, you need to get some sort of results, because if you don't get any results, we're just going to shut you down and get rid of your grant money, because at this point it's been 2 years and we're not traveling through space or time yet, are we? So,
Which, like, do they, like, is that, like, something they knew that the thing did?
No, that's not even, because, like, it said gate to heaven, so, like, and they didn't know what the points were.
Could have just been a big bomb.
Yeah, they had no idea what it was, so they were just like, 2 years, we've seen no results, like, So I imagine this is, like, her Hail Mary play, where she's like, I'll just find some sort of crackpot linguist, and maybe he can figure something out. And then he does. So it takes him 14 days to solve the problem that's been like vexing them for 2 years.
So they fire the old fucker up.
Yeah, because they're like, we need to do this right now. We can't wait a week. We can't wait a couple weeks. We're doing this right now. Like, fuck it. We're turning it on. It's going on. So they turn it on, and when they turn it on, they have like this star chart map thing set up. And, well, first of all, they show Daniel Jackson the Stargate. And it's beautiful. It's like just this gorgeous glory shot of the Stargate, where he's like, wow.
We spent money on this prop.
Yeah, they did. They spend money on a lot of props. Like, you say it looks cheap, but that puppet, I love that puppet.
So anyway.
Oh no, is that what the controversial opinion is about? The puppet?
Not, don't worry.
Because I love the puppet. And if you say you don't like the puppet, I'm going to throw
No, but I do have a fun fact about the puppet later.
Oh no.
So anyway, they send a probe through. They say it lands across the universe, which is clearly something that was retconned by the TV show.
Yeah, other side of the known universe is what she says exactly. She says this goes to the other side of the known universe because they have this star chart up.
Which is like where reality would start to break down, I think.
Yeah, like the known universe, okay, but like the TV show retcons that to make it so it's just the Milky Way, which I think, isn't that why Atlantis is such a big deal when they go to Atlantis? Because that's in Andromeda?
Yes, Atlantis is an entirely new galaxy, because I was looking this up, and the movie establishes that you need 7 glyphs, 6 for the destination, 1 for the origin point. But when they go to Atlantis, the whole big hoopla about them finding Atlantis is they figure out you need to use an 8th glyph, which the 8th glyph is your galaxy of destination. And you only need to use it when you're leaving your galaxy.
Oh, okay. So, like, if they were going back to the Milky Way, they need to use an eighth glyph.
Yeah.
But while
which
they're
is, like, I think also the point of Stargate Universe, which has been a long time since I watched.
Oh, yeah.
But Stargate Universe, the point was they went from Atlantis to a ship in, like, a whole other galaxy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember a lot of Universe, because I kind of gave up on it.
You really shouldn't have. I mean, it was canceled on a cliffhanger, but it was better. It was, I would say, almost like one of the best written SG-1 shows.
Yeah, like I watched like the first season.
They were going for a very anyway, that's neither here
totally
nor
other
there.
Discussion. But my 2 notes here that I just want to point out is, one of them is, why not wait a week or two and, like, maybe figure out a bit more about this than just firing it up like, it's time to turn it on. Because they send
a probe through, and then immediately they're like, we need to send a team through right fucking now.
Exactly. And then my second note was, I miss General Hammond. This General West guy is just not up to par. General Hammond for life.
Yeah, General West. He looked familiar. He was Leon Rippey, which I know him from Deadwood.
Deadwood.
Yeah, he was in Deadwood, Under the Dome. A lot of TV work. Oh, Leverage, right. Jack Latimer.
Oh, he was Latimer in Leverage?
Yes, he was Latimer in Leverage.
Oh my god.
So that's
he looks
how
so
many
old
Leverage
now.
actors now?
Wow,
2?
Dean Devlin likes to reuse actors, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
Yeah, no, and
Latimer had a pretty big part too.
Daddy in 6 Feet Under. Was he her dad in 6 Feet Under? Anyway, long
and a
career.
well-known actor.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was like, I miss General Hammond, because this General West guy just does not hold up. I also, like, they fired up, and the Stargate itself and the event horizon are so pretty.
Sorry, also, Leon Rippey was LQ Sonny Clemens in Star Trek The Next Generation, which was the season finale of the first season where they
So you interrupted
him.
me to talk more about Star Trek?
When do I not interrupt you to talk more about Star Trek?
So that's a 2 on the Star Trek count of this podcast that has nothing to do with Star Trek.
Well, it's...
No, just because it's sci-fi does not mean that it has anything to do with Star Trek, Chris. The 2 are not mutually exclusive. But it's fine. Just for those of you who are counting, you could probably make a good drinking game out of this, though I don't know how drunk you'd get. But he's on his second Star Trek reference. That's a 2 count.
So we go for the Stargate sequence, which is essentially a kind of visual homage to this, what was actually literally called the Stargate sequence from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
But it's also got like a little bit of Star Wars in there with the way the stars move at that one point where they fold together and then they become long lines.
It's you know what, as far as like computer technology went in 94, it probably means that they spent a good chunk of the budget on that single sequence, which is why they show it to you twice. They show it to you the first time, and then it's the very last thing you see before the credits roll.
Money, money, money. Gotta get your money's worth out of it.
Which is like, I remember that actually
CGI
being a very, very hot thing in the early 90s. Like going through a magical, mystical tunnel thing.
Yeah.
Which, like, because I remember there's a couple video games that had that sequence that were, you know, they were really trying to impress upon you. And then, like, it all just ended up as media player visualizations. Where you just fire up your media player.
Don't you smack talk the media player. The media player visualizations
media player
are great.
I had
Alchemy.
Real Player, not Real Player. I forget the name of the program, but there was a program where you get all sorts of sweet skins, and I remember getting a Terminator 3 skin because Terminator 3 had just come out.
Ooh, Terminator 3.
So they go through the Stargate, and they end up across the known universe on a sandy hill on location in Tunisia.
Is it Tunisia? Did you Google it?
It looks like it's someplace
sand.
around the Sahara.
It's just sand.
Yeah.
It's sand. They go to a sand planet because sand is really easy, I guess, to film in. Because, like, there's always a desert
George
planet.
Lucas.
Well, there's always a desert planet, though. Like, there's always a desert planet
Sand
in
is not easy to film.
Mass Effect has a desert planet.
They didn't film Mass Effect.
No, but, you know, like, it's a trope at this point.
Like,
desert planet.
The deserts of Tatooine are better looking than the desert of Abydos. Because the desert of Abydos is very one note, where it's just these sand dunes, and they're not particularly filmed very well. Whereas, like, Tatooine has all of these different landscapes, you know, rocky passages and sand passages and fun buildings. And I think the point of the desert, one of the points of the desert, rather, was, yeah, they wanted to do their Lawrence of Arabia influence, but they were also probably very influenced by Star Wars.
Yeah, well, lots of things are influenced by Star Wars.
I do like the matte shot, though, of the pyramid with the three suns.
Yeah, that's pretty great, with the pyramid and the three suns, and then that the sort of facade that they've definitely made physically, and then the rest of it's the matte painting. And it looks really good, too. Like, it blends together very well. But so they emerge out into this temple, and they go through this amazing adventure, and one guy's just like, what a rush. And you're like, yeah, man, that's definitely a rush.
That's a trailer line.
Yeah, that's a trailer line. So they go through the temple a little bit, they look around, they come out, and they're in a desert. They look up, and they see three suns and a pyramid, like the Great Pyramid of Giza. And they're like, wow. And then the military guys are like, okay, it's time to go home. And Daniel's like, well, I can't. Like, I don't have any of
Yeah, Jackson is immediately useless.
Yeah, like, but also, like, you think they would have asked these questions beforehand. Like,
maybe if they had taken a week to think of them some questions.
Nope, we gotta go right now. So they're like, well, you know, get us back. And he goes, well, I can't. And they're like, what do you mean you can't? And he goes, well, it's an alien planet. I don't have a stone figure with the different origin points and stuff on it.
So earlier I was talking out of my ass.
Yeah, so he's like, you know, I gotta find it. And they're just like, we gotta look around a little. And they immediately all get super pissy at him and start bullying him. Because, you know, in my experience, when you bully somebody, that makes them want to help you.
So yeah, French Stewart is like, so one dude asks, oh, if we don't fire up the gate in so many hours, they'll just fire it up on the other end and we can go back through. And French Stewart's like immediately like, that's not how it works, you dummy. Mm-hmm. We have to fire it up on our end because it's one way. How the fuck do you know that, man?
Well, this
is the very second time you fired up the Stargate.
Better question. How do you not know that guy who's on this mission?
Well, no, that's a good question. But how does anybody know that?
If that's something that the scientists know, if they're like, well, maybe they did some testing that we didn't see. Maybe there was like a week's worth of testing, but they basically immediately go. But if the scientists know you can only fire it up on one side and go through, then how does the dude who's on that mission not know that? He's gotta. That was definitely in the briefing.
That also leads to another small plot hole that, like, if they already had the 6 symbols figured out on the gate, and there's only, like, say, 12 or 20 figures on the gate.
Why didn't they just do all the combinations? Because they didn't know that it was a gate to the stars. They didn't know it was a Stargate.
Oh, so they were just worried it might just explode?
Yeah, like, they had no idea what it did, so they didn't mess around with it, which is, like, one of the few intelligent things the military do in this movie. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I wrote down, haha, let's bully the nerd. That will make him want to help us more. And then what shows up is the puppet, the amazing puppet, because they're like, so they're all bullying him, and Daniel's like, all right, I'm gonna go pick up my stuff, because they throw his suitcase at him, which, like, that could have important papers that could get you home in.
It's a bunch of frat bros sitting around in a desert doing nothing. It's like the Bush administration all over again.
So Daniel's, like, going to pick up his stuff, and he notices, like, clear footprints in the sand, so he's like, I'm gonna follow these. So he follows the footprints, and nobody pays attention to where the only guy who's supposed to get them home goes after they bully him, because they're like, that'll work, that'll make him like us and want to help us and get us home.
He goes off and he finds this amazing
and he finds this amazing alien puppet, and it is literally like the only thing on the planet that makes it feel alien. This is the only thing that makes it feel alien.
This gross puppet, by the way, is 1,000 times better than any animal in The Last Jedi, and also illustrates my main problem with the animals in The Last Jedi, which is that, like, you look at this puppet and it's kind of gross and weird and feels real and looks like something that, like, could actually exist. And then The Last Jedi, they all just look like Disney cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, like,
yeah, like
this
got
one
like
puppet
it's got like long stringy hair, and it looks like it drools. It looks like it's like kind of like a weird alien cow. I have a note that it looks
like the horse version of Station.
It does look like the horse version of Station. That just makes me love it more.
Which
Station.
Actually, do you want to know? I'm watching the movie, right? And I'm seeing this alien.
Yes, I watched it with you.
I'm watching this alien
like an hour ago,
and this alien's making all these grunts and noises, these noises, right? So a thought strikes my head, and I go, "Wait a minute, that sounds kind of familiar." Is that Frank Welker? And yeah, I did the research.
Frank Welker?
Holy fuck, it's Frank Welker.
Oh my god.
So Frank Welker, professional noisemaker.
Frank Welker. That's amazing. It was actually him.
It's actually Frank Welker. Because all I did was Google Stargate / Frank Welker, and immediately it popped up with a picture of the alien horse.
That's
and
amazing.
Yes, Frank Welker did all the noises for those alien puppets.
That's amazing.
Voice of Megatron.
It's like a weird alien yak, and it's got like a weird mushy looking face, and it licks it takes off because Daniel finds it and he's like, calm down, it's okay, big alien yak. And the alien yak is just like, the fuck you talking about, bro? And then it takes off when the military guys show up, because Kurt Russell comes over after arming his nuke, because this is the first time you see his nuke. He goes off to arm his nuke.
I think he's just testing it to make sure it works.
He's making sure it didn't get damaged in the trip over, I guess. And then after he like plays around with his nuke a little bit, he goes back to the army guys who were bullying Daniel, and he's like, where's Jackson? And the army guys are like, because they know that he's not gonna approve of them bullying Daniel Jackson, because he's a colonel in the military and not some, fuckwit.
Frat bro?
Yeah, not some frat bro in the middle of the desert. So he's like, okay, where's Daniel? And they're like, and they like kind of look in the direction he went. So they go to find him, because they're like, we gotta find him.
Did I mention how this is a very pre-9/11 view of the military in the movies?
Yeah, it
90s
is.
90s view of the military was very like bumbling.
Yeah, they're both like the heroes and the villains, because at the end of the day, the military saves the day, but also like throughout the movie, it's like, why would you just send a nuke to a planet you know nothing about?
You can't like trust the military kind of thing.
And like he's very like none of the rest of the squad know about his nuke. He's the only one who's aware of the nuke. So Kurt Russell is like, yeah, we gotta find him. So they go over this dune, they find Daniel Jackson talking to this big alien yak. And they startle it when they show up, and the yak takes off, and Daniel gets caught up in the harness, because he points out, it's got a harness, that means somebody's using it. So this big alien yak takes off, and he gets caught up in it, and he gets hilariously dragged behind the big alien yak for a scene that goes on really long, and like the military dudes don't try that hard to help him.
This is like a comedy relief moment. This is a typical Roland Emmerich, let's have a bumbling character do stupid stuff to give us a little bit of comedy relief before the big, scene.
And from the canon of this movie, like, after having watched it again, these guys 100% would have just shot that alien yak when it took off, right? Like, they would have just been like, yeah, no, it's taking the only way we have to get home. We're shooting it in the head so it doesn't, like, possibly kill him.
Well, certainly any sort of realistic modern military would.
Yeah, but also, like, this military. Like, when they come up on the civilians for the first time, Jack O'Neill and his buds have their guns out ready to go. When they, later on, when the people are like, no, you can't go outside because this big sandstorm is coming, all three of them take, like, human hostages to threaten so that they can be like, let us out. Like, this military, as they're shown in this movie, would have just shot that yak thing. Also, and then the rest of the movie wouldn't have happened.
The scene where they finally show up, so they see the big mining outpost, and they decide to go visit it, because I guess the natives already saw that they were there, and the natives immediately start treating them as if they're gods, because first off, Daniel's wearing the necklace of Ra, which is the symbol of their god. So they immediately take him as some kind of, like...
Emissary
or
like
god,
messenger of that god.
And then, the military is very jumpy, but, they... So this brings me to my controversial opinion that I mentioned earlier. Do you want to hear it?
Well... No, because I wanna do three things. Because, like, they meet them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, wait, how far into, like, does your controversial opinion happen before or after they meet the dude from the Mummy?
After. That's when it popped in my head.
Okay, so I'm gonna get to that part then. So, they show up, and immediately every single one of these people of color bows to this white dude, and I was like, oh, this feels awkward now. Like, maybe in the 90s it was fine, but, like, now it feels kind of awkward.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
I made a note of that. I was like, that feels super awkward, and maybe it was fine in the 90s, but, like,
so this is exactly what I'm talking
like,
about, okay? Because this is how pre-9/11 this movie is, okay? And my controversial thought about the movie was the fact that this movie is about a superior American force arming a local populace to depose of a brutal dictator, mainly because said dictator was a existential threat to American superiority. So, essentially what O'Neill has done...
Stargate the movie accidentally predicted the war in Iraq.
What I'm saying is that, like, in the 1980s, the American government armed the populace of Afghanistan, specifically the Mujahideen, to fight the Soviets. The Mujahideen, who would later go on to form the Taliban. So, would the people of Abydos go on eventually to form some kind of Taliban-esque organization?
I guess it depends on how much of their weaponry they left behind on the planet before they this is my point. It.
This is how pre-9/11 thinking this is in terms of American interventionist policy.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Also,
that's a rough take.
Also, this movie has white savior complex all over it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, 110%. But that's like a really deep and, like, insightful point that I'm going to follow up with.
That's my controversial opinion.
And thus begins Jackson's go-to of making friends with aliens by giving them chocolate.
Yes.
Because
a continuing characteristic.
This is a continuing character trait from this guy. He gives the chocolate first the alien yak is like, I would like some chocolate. Mm-hmm. And then he meets, like, the human residents of Abydos. It is Abydos, right?
Yeah, Abydos. They don't call it that
But that's what it's called.
In the show they call it that, but not in the movie.
He meets the human residents of Abydos and is like, hey, guy from the Mummy, because it's the guy from the Mummy.
The yak monster
chocolate
bar.
I just brought up the yak, and I said that he gives it part of a chocolate bar. The yak's like, I want some of that, and Daniel's like, cool.
And then he gives it to the dude from the Mummy.
And then he gives it to the dude from the Mummy, and the dude from the Mummy is like, oh, this is fucking delicious. I want more of this, and also, you're wearing the symbol of our god, so I'll praise you.
This is like... And it's a little bit of, like, I think maybe, like, an intentional callback to, like, American soldiers in World War II giving French and Dutch children chocolate bars. Because, like, every soldier was just, like, given a shit ton of chocolate bars.
Really? You're going to give Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich that much credit?
Roland Emmerich has a World War II movie coming out very soon, I think. He has a movie coming out called Midway that's specifically a World War II fighter plane movie.
It still seems like an awful lot of credit to give to like, Dean Devlin.
Well, I'm just saying.
Like, don't get me wrong, I love Leverage, I do, but, like, also Leverage...
You don't think he's intentionally
Leverage has a really terrible trans joke in it, And I don't know if he's really capable of achieving that level of depth. Mm-hmm. But whatever, we can agree to disagree. But yeah, so it's the dude from The Mummy, and you also meet in this scene, is it Skara? Is that his name? Skara.
One of only 2 actors to go on to SG-1.
Yes, Skara. So you meet Skara, and Skara is the son of the chieftain and brother of Shari in this movie, who is Sharai in the show. And she is Daniel's eventual wife, which we will get to how cringy that is later. So they're like, yeah, the dude from The Mummy is like, oh, we should be friends because you gave me chocolate and also you're messengers of Ra. They're like, okay, so they go and kind of hang out with him, and they're like, all right, well, we're going to leave now and go back to our group because they've left us a section of the military cannon fodder back at the temple that they originally came in at. So they're like, we're going to leave them there and we're going to come here. So they're like, we got to get back. So they go to leave, and all of the natives to the planet are like, no, you can't leave. And because
there's like a face-ripping sandstorm coming.
Yeah, well, they freak out. The military freaks out, and they immediately take like unarmed native Abydonians hostage and are pointing guns at them like, oh, if you make any move, we're gonna shoot your friends. And you're like, holy shit, military, calm the fuck down. Like, they're not like, what are they gonna do to you? What are they gonna do to you? You have automatic weapons. So they're like, okay, and Jack's like, you guys stay here, I'm gonna go up and see what this guy's talking about. They go up, he sees the sandstorm, and he's like, oh, it was a sandstorm. And then Daniel says what I was feeling, which is, yeah, that would have been a really great reason to shoot everybody over. Because it's like, calm down, military, Jesus. So they're like, okay, we have to stay the night, we can't go back. So they stay the night, and Daniel's sitting there and he's eating, and he tries this weird armadillo-shaped thing that they have, that they make, and he's like, oh, it tastes like chicken.
Okay, yeah, they get to the scene, right? Where
he's clearly just eating chicken.
I know, yeah, no, he's very clearly just eating chicken.
He's just eating chicken.
That's something that I feel like probably holds up because of, Blu-ray quality, where on the Blu-ray you can clearly see that he's just eating chicken, where like I remember watching it in VHS being like, ooh, that looks gross.
Yeah. Kind of like when you watch Temple of Doom in Blu-ray quality now, and you get to that eating scene and you're like, okay, that looks super fake now. Whereas when I watched it, even just on DVD, it still looked passable enough that I was like, ugh. But like now I watch it and I get to...
By the way, I want to point out, you were talking about how like, set design looks great. The Abydosian village, to me, looks very similar to Flintstones the movie. Yeah,
terrible.
Where everything is clearly
Is this your controversial opinion?
No, my controversial opinion was about American interventionism.
Oh, right, yeah. Sorry, I forgot.
But no,
that wasn't that controversial. I think you built it up more than it was. I think if you'd said something like, I think the puppet is ugly, then I would have been like, oh.
No, the village that they're in looks very Flintstone-esque, with a lot of like very oversized, clearly foam carved pillars, and a lot of like. See, this is what I was talking about earlier, where this movie's very trying to like economically hide its budget.
You make me sad.
Like, no, it's inventive because they're able to build something which, if you look closely at it, clearly looks like a cheap set, but they were able to kind of film around it and, hide it, and to, maybe not take as much of advantage of, their scenery. But it just, I got from a few of the establishing shots, I got a very Flintstones the movie vibe from the sets.
Well, first of all, you're wrong. But second of all, you're still wrong. I liked it. I liked the set design. It felt like its own kind of little world. They don't have a lot in this movie to kind of impress upon you that it's an alien world, that it's an alien civilization. They more use, like, the fact that they have a completely different language base, and they use, like, your alien yak. They get a lot of mileage out of that puppet.
Yeah, they're like George Lucas with his.
They're like, oh, we gotta get our money's worth. They're unionized. We gotta get some money out of this puppeteer and this puppet. So like, let's go.
Very Jim Henson-esque. I wonder if.
Oh, I loved it. I loved the puppet. I love the puppet so much. I will sing the puppet's praises till the end of time. Praise the puppet. But they're like, yeah, like, you know, you can't leave. So he stays. They eat. Daniel's like, we have to eat it because, you know, it would offend them because the military guys are like, we shouldn't eat this. And it's like, what are they going to do? Poison you? Like, you're fine. You have like clearly have superior weaponry. You'll be fine. So they eat this weird armadillo thing, and Daniel's like, okay, great. That was tasty. He tries to write something to the guy from The Mummy, who is the chieftain.
Yeah, he has the immediate reaction of, this guy's trying to write something. Quickly, get him laid.
Yeah, literally, he's like, so he tries to write something, and the guy erases it, and it's like, no, we don't do that.
And then
here.
he's just like, no, take him away, get him bathed and laid.
In his own language, like I really liked how throughout it they're talking their own language, and you don't have subtitles for that, and I have no idea what they're saying because it's authentic. And then once Daniel learns the language, so does the subtitles. I don't know if you noticed that, but once Daniel learns the language and becomes fluent, so do the subtitles, so that you know what they're talking about when it's the scenes of just the Aberdonians talking. Mm-hmm. So you're like, okay, so he eats, he tries to talk to them, it doesn't work, and then he's like, okay, a bunch of cleaner ladies, you show up. So these cleaning ladies show up, and they take James Spader, and they bring him to this tent, and they clean him in, like, a really invasive and aggressive way, and it's like, I don't know why this is funny.
This actually, I think, is, like, I have a secret theory that, like, every great filmmaker just really wants to make a Bond movie, because this scene is very, very similar to
Wait, are you saying
From Russia
Roland
with Love.
Emmerich is a great filmmaker?
Okay, maybe I'm eating my words a little bit.
Yeah, I know how you feel about Roland Emmerich.
Okay, I think that, like,
every director, period, maybe? Every male director.
A lot of these guys, a lot of these big budget directors.
Big budget. He's changed to big budget now.
Yeah, they want to direct a Bond film because, like, a Bond film is something...
Do you want to direct a Bond film, Chris?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
How would I not want to direct a Bond film?
Exactly. So maybe just all male filmmakers really want to make a Bond film.
This scene is very similar to From Russia with Love, where James Bond gets a bride because he goes to a wedding, and then they have two girls fight over him. And then he's just like, you know, why do I have to choose between you? And then it's implied that he has a threesome, which is very James Bond.
Yeah.
But
that's exactly what James Bond would do.
The point is, this is like a plot point in a movie from 1962. Mm-hmm. This is from a movie that was, by all accounts, the last film John F. Kennedy saw before he died.
Oh my God. Really?
Yeah. Apparently. Wow. One of the last films that he saw before he died was an early cut of From Russia with Love.
Wow. Why do you know that?
Because I know everything about movies all the time.
You're so weird. Okay, let's get back to the plot.
But it's just, my point is, that's a scene from a movie from the early 60s, and they're repeating it in this film to a very uncomfortable plot point.
Yeah, it is bad. So he gets cleaned. And then the chieftain's daughter, who I mentioned earlier, Shari, shows up and strips and gets boobies out, and then
it's a PG-13 film. There's no boobies.
And Daniel's sitting there with his mouth literally hung open, like James Spader played this like as cornily as possible because his mouth's just boobs. Which, like, Daniel, I feel like you've probably seen boobs before, but maybe not from how quickly you marry this lady. So he's sitting there and he stares at her boobs for like a couple seconds too long before going, no, that's fine, you don't have to do that, and like covering her back up so that he's still, you know, a nice guy. He covers her back up, and then he opens the door to the tent, and he's like, you know, I'm gonna give her back. Like, I don't want to have sex with this woman when she's it's uncomfortable. So he opens the tent flap, and her dad's standing there, and he's like, and like he clearly says like, what's going on? What is he doing? And she's like, I don't know. He doesn't seem to want it. And he's like, what's wrong with her?
Why won't you fuck my daughter?
Yeah, like why would you have sex with my daughter? And then Daniel's like, no, I'm very happy. It's fine. Thank you. This is great. And then he goes back into the tent. And he's like, So then he tries again to write to her. He's like, I'm going to try and communicate with this woman who just showed me her boobs. He draws a picture in the sand, and she just doesn't look at it. She looks away. She doesn't, like, go and erase it like her dad did, but she, like, looks away from it. And he's like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And he gets up, and he's, like, standing at the entrance to his little whatever and just staring out, and then she draws like in it, and they start talking and communicating, at least through the drawings. This plot point's so uncomfortable because like at first it's like, oh cool, she's learning they're learning how to communicate. I really like that. I know that maybe it slows the pacing of the movie down a little bit, but I personally really liked watching them like learn to communicate and how that goes and how you would go about talking to
It's not exactly Nell or The Arrival in terms of two people learning to communicate with each other. But
does every movie have to be that? Can't it just be a fun action adventure with sci-fi elements to it? That's part of the reason why I don't understand why everybody hates Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets, because that movie is just kind of a fun action adventure movie in space. And sure, it could have been so much more, but why can't I just have a fun action adventure movie in space? Why can't I have Die Hard in space?
So they're also flashing back to the military guys who are still, like, because only a few of the military guys, Kowalski and O'Neill, went with Daniel Jackson to the Aberdosian village. French Stewart's character and the rest of the Expendables are all back at the pyramid.
Yep, because they were at base camp, separated by the sandstorm.
Yeah, and so you get the sandstorm, you get the big image of the pyramid ship landing. This pyramid ship, by the way, to me was very Dune-esque. Like, it, in terms of its look and design, it reminded me a lot of like the kind of flying cathedrals of Frank Herbert's Dune. And it also reminded me, too, of just how much mileage you can get out of great model work and a smoke machine.
Yeah, I literally wrote, I have two things. One, Time to Die, Military Bros. And the other one is, sets are A+, these would be CGI these days. Because literally these days, these would just be, you would have the dusty floor and maybe the columns. Maybe. The columns, like, think about the columns in Thor.
The ship landing would be all CGI. It would be very ostentatious. It would be at like,
Yeah, instead of like just really nicely detailed model work.
This is going to be high praise, but the model work in this movie of that ship is very on par with Alien.
Oh, wow. That is the highest of praise, as that is his favorite movie.
So, there is about 7 times in this following sequence where 5
this
people...
death scene.
Where 5 people cock their guns.
Yep. A lot of times. The exact same sound effect.
It's that sound effect. Everyone has it. It's the sound effect from GoldenEye when you cock your pistol.
It's so bad. And it's egregious. Like, they use it so many times. And that especially upon the second watching. Like, we noticed it the last time we watched. But the second time watching, it was like, oof. Oof, movie.
Yeah, that's
that
Roland Emmerich
rough.
Thinking that you're dumb and having to remind you that these people are holding active weapons by including constant sound effects of the same sound effect of... And they're using different types of guns. One guy has an MP5... I think someone else has like an M16 or something.
Does
but no,
Jack have a P90, or is that
no?
Not
they don't have
until
P90s until like much later in the show. They use MP5s for the first while in the show.
Okay.
Which is I'm sure you've seen it a dozen times. It's kind of like the Navy SEAL gun. It's very small. The helicopter pilot uses it in Black Hawk Down.
Okay, yeah, I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the MP5. The P90 is a gun that they use much later in the television show, which I remember I had a friend in college who was the guy who kind of introduced me to airsoft. And Stargate and Stargate Atlantis were filmed in Vancouver, and he talked about how he had a friend who owned a business that sold airsoft rifles. The P90 airsoft rifle was about $200 for a gun that looked kind of realistic. He had the guys from Stargate come in and order them by the bulk, and he sold them for $700 a unit.
Wow.
To the TV show. Because they had no idea what the actual worth of these airsoft P90s were.
That's awesome.
And that's like, he told me that like back in 2006. Jeez.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. Wow. Well, was it a Canadian production, the TV show?
Yes, it was very much Vancouver.
Yeah, it was Vancouver.
Where very much all these TV shows are filmed.
Yeah. So the next thing I had was that Kurt Russell encouraging kids to smoke since 1994.
Yes, you wanted me to remind you of the hard cut from everybody horribly dying to just, hey, what's a lighter about?
Yeah, so like everybody horribly dies, and then there's this incredibly hard cut from the movie where it's like somebody's been horribly murdered, and then it cuts right to Kurt Russell's having a cigarette. And
odd editing choice. I would have put maybe an establishing shot in there.
Yeah,
somewhere.
like maybe put something in between for like the audience to have a breather, but it goes right to is it Sokka?
Like Devon Sawa, just I don't know.
What's his name? What's his character name again?
Skara,
yes. Where Skara is watching him have a cigarette and he sees him like light the lighter, and it's this really cute bonding scene between the two of them where he's like, oh, a lighter, that's cool, like I want to be cool like Jack O'Neill. Yeah, take a look at my lighter. So he's looking at it and he's like, oh, that's very cool. And then he like pulls a cigarette out of the pack, and Kurt Russell's like, yeah, sure, smoke it. Kurt Russell encouraging kids to smoke. And then he tries one and he hates it. It's terrible, and he's like, yeah, I guess it is pretty stupid.
This was very much around the 90s when we had to have a lot of smoking bad PSAs.
Yeah,
in our
even
films.
though we still had smoking in our movies all over the place. And then,
which, by the way, we're coming back around because I've noticed in recent films people smoke a shit ton.
Yeah,
not in like Avengers films.
That's
but
because
like
they don't want to put like
vaping
in a movie. It doesn't look nearly as cool. Then he tries the cigarette, he hates it, and then he goes for the gun that Jack's left like sitting next to him, and Jack freaks out. And there's a very clear shot of his two army guy buddies sitting there, and they like look up at him and they stare at him for a second, and then they go back to what they were doing. And I was like, wow, man, you don't even ask if he's okay. Like, you just shouted at a kid. You don't, hey, is everything all right? What happened? You're just like, it's fine. We'll just go back to polishing our guns like men.
We also get some introduction of Raw, our villain, Jay Davidson, in this scene. Mostly just him wearing what looks like an excruciatingly heavy helmet.
Oh, it's amazing. It's the helmet from the opening, right? It's the kind of
they got their money's worth out of that prop.
Weird mask thing.
This is also the first time you see that the giant jackal-headed and Horus-headed guards are just wearing like retractable electronic helmets.
Yes.
And I was watching it this time. The CG does not hold up. It looks like it's almost an After Effect filter.
Man. It's 1994.
Yeah, but I mean, Jurassic Park came out the previous year.
Okay, well, not all movies are Jurassic Park. I'm pretty sure someone sold their soul to get the amazing technical specifications of Jurassic Park right. You saying that is like, well, why doesn't everyone on a movie production sell their soul to make the technical specifications of a movie perfect in the 90s? And I just don't think that's feasible. You can't just sit there and be like, yeah, but Jurassic Park, though. That can't be your answer for everything. I mean, it's the answer for a lot of things. Like, which movie would you not want to live through? Jurassic Park.
So they decide to go back, right? Like, they decide to actually go back to the pyramid because they've lost contact with their team, so they go back after the sandstorm ends in the morning.
Well, first, Daniel is, like, learning the language from Shari. he learns it in like a day. He learns it in like a couple hours of them sitting talking to each other, and then for the rest of the movie, he's basically fluent.
Yeah, he's like a regular Hoshi Sato.
And then Jack is like talking to the kids. He's talking to Skara and Skara's little gang of lost boys. I gotta find Jack. I gotta find Daniel. I gotta find Jackson. And they're like, I don't know what you're saying because we don't speak your language and I have no idea what you're talking about. So he goes, he does like a bunch of motions. He's like, I guess dweeb doesn't mean anything to you guys, does it? Like, haha, beat up on the nerds more. Oh, the 90s. And then they eventually are like, oh, you mean the Bok guy, the guy who thought that the armadillo tasted like chicken. He's like, yes. And they're like, okay. You could just ask your dad, Skara, because your dad is the village chieftain, and you could just say to him, hey, where's Daniel? And then your dad could tell you. But no, what he does instead is he grabs the vest that Daniel was wearing when they first showed up, and he shoves it in this puppet's face.
Oh, yeah, the Frank Welker camel.
And the puppet finds him with its amazing puppet tracking skills because it has like, I guess, scent stuff, so it goes to find him. So they get him, and then they go back to base camp because they haven't heard anything from the other guys yet. They haven't heard anything back.
Yeah, and then we get a repeat of the scene we just had, which is the group of army men cocking their guns over and over again while they get shot at from behind pillars and quickly decimated.
Sure do.
One of the guards, the Horus guard, I believe, is Jimon Hansu. This was his first...
Yes, it is.
This was his first major role. Like, he had done some short films beforehand.
I'm so sorry.
And then a couple years later, he would star in Amistad, which was his kind of big breakout hit.
I've never seen that one. Is it good?
Yeah, it's a Spielberg film.
It's so funny that I can just assume that you've seen a movie that you bring up, and 9 times out of 10 you have.
Yeah. And it's actually kind of funny, because that means that Jimon Hansu, Kurt Russell, and James Spader were all MCU villains.
Oh, and can I just point out real quickly that the scene where Daniel's explaining what happened and how Raw came to be... where he's reading off of the wall to Jack and the rest of the army dudes. It's intercut with the scene at the beginning in the extended cut. It's intercut with the scene that we just watched at the beginning of the movie, because they're like, well, we need to put this scene in again, because I guess they just chopped it up in editing and interspersed it with Daniel telling the story of how this kid was unafraid of the bright light and went up to it, and then he was taken and used as a vessel. Okay, movie. I don't know why you needed to put that at the beginning and then put it again later on in this movie. Maybe you didn't, and that's why this is the extended cut.
Jay Davidson, who plays the villain Raw in the film, who is really mostly introduced in this following scene, he had one film before this, which is The Crying Game, which was an Oscar-winning film in which he played a transgender lounge singer. And that was the big reveal secret in the middle of that movie that recontextualized the whole film. But he didn't want to really continue acting. Like, he had just taken the one role. So,
was it wildly transphobic?
No, I don't think so.
No?
I mean, I haven't seen the film. It's possible it is.
You haven't seen that James Bond film?
It's not a James Bond film.
Oh, which film was it?
The Crying Game.
Oh, what was The Crying Game about?
Crying Game is a...
hold on. Is it about a lounge singer who turns out to be transgender?
Yes.
Sorry, that was a dumb question. Of course, that's what the movie was about.
Well, it's mostly about an IRA agent, IRA agent who is marked for death, who tries to pay back a favor to a man who helped him escape from a sticky situation where he was going to be murdered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've never seen the film myself, but I've read some synopsises, and I should see it. But
oh, okay. So it sounds like it's good then.
Anyway, Jay Davidson did not want to continue acting, so when they approached him about this role, he said no, and then they said please, and then he said no, and then they said please again, and he said fine, I'll do it for $1 million. thinking that they were going to say finally no, and then they were like, okay, you can have $1 million.
Okay, yeah.
So he's one of the highest paid actors on this film.
That's kind of amazing.
He also he hated the costuming in the film so much.
Well, because the costume looks super uncomfortable and horrible.
Yeah, well, he refused to remove his nipple rings, so the costume department had to work around them entirely. And then on the last day of filming, on set, he was so fed up with the costuming that as soon as they called cut, he just stripped off naked and walked off set.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did not want to be in the movie. Same thing with James Spader. James Spader more wanted to be in the movie because he was being paid, but he said that the script was the dumbest script he had ever read, and it was so dumb that it was interesting to him.
Oh boy.
So that's why he also said it from a very pragmatic standpoint that he was an actor, and in order to be an actor, he had to work and get paid. So at the end of the day, if they were paying him, he was going to show up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for ruining my secret dreams of them all hanging out after the shoot and being friends.
Oh, I'm sure Kurt Russell was, very amicable. Kurt Russell's a very nice guy to hang out with.
It was a joke, but it's fine. Yeah, you see his helmets. The helmets are awesome. I have notes here that are literally just teleporter rings are awesome. These helmets are awesome.
The pyramid, they're all captured, essentially.
Yes, they
right?
all get captured because they go back to the pyramid and their guys have been taken out and they get captured. And you get introduced to Ra and the teleporter rings and all that stuff. And he has this long monologue about how he's going to blow up everything because
he doesn't have that monologue until after. At first he just kind of introduces himself, and then O'Neill grabs the gun and tries to shoot him.
And then he tries to shoot him, and then
Daniel gets caught in the crossfire and gets shot.
And it's really funny because the staff weapons, as you've seen them in the movie so far, the first time you see them used, they blow up huge chunks of rock. Daniel should just be a red paste.
Yeah, and
he got hit by
they're very
same
nebulous
weapon.
about what they do.
Yeah, so he should just be a red paste on the wall, but no, he's just got a burn mark, and they're off to the sarcophagus with you, which another one of my notes. Oh, look, it's the sarcophagus. It's the solving of all problems sarcophagus. Very
little blood in this movie.
Oh yeah,
this movie is
very PG.
it feels like almost a later 90s, maybe earlier 2000s PG-13 movie, where they tend to avoid the use of blood. They tend to avoid, anything extra gory. Again, I hate to harp on this, but Jurassic Park came out the year before, the same rating, PG-13, and that has a guy bitten in half by a T-Rex.
And it's amazing.
And even, Independence Day and whatnot would have way more death and destruction than this film does.
Oh, I have a note here, and it's just, who wears shoes in the bath?
Did Ra wear shoes in the bath?
Yeah, there's this extended shot of Ra with these weird kind of shoes that are not shoes but also kind of look like shoes. They're foot jewelry, basically. Mm-hmm. And he wore them into the bath for some reason. This is
when after he rejuvenates Daniel Jackson. And
and then Daniel shows up in his bath, and he comes out of his bath and he's wearing foot jewelry.
Which I noticed something really interesting about this scene, which it led me to reading a bit of trivia about the film. Apparently, with the first cut of the movie, audiences didn't like it because they found it very confusing. So the producer came in, and what he mainly did was he took all of Jay Davidson's scenes. Jay Davidson was originally speaking English in those scenes and was talking entirely separate dialogue. They just overdubbed him with the alien language and then changed the subtitles to be more expository, much more expository subtitles. So
really?
Yeah, so if you watch his lips in that scene, he's very clearly speaking English and he's very clearly talking about something else, but it's just they put the alien language on top. They did the same thing in Star Trek the Motion Picture, where they would have the Vulcans and the Klingons just speak English, and then they'd have James Doohan come in later and match up words to what their lips were kind of saying, kind of like the
bad lip reading
guy, yeah. So I would love to see the bad lip reading guy's take on those scenes, because being able to pull out what actually Jay Davidson was saying or close to saying might be interesting.
Except the whole point is that he's notoriously bad at it. And that's why he made the channel, was because he was notoriously bad at lip reading, and his mom was like making fun of him. So he started making a bad lip reading channel, and it worked out real good. Maybe ask him to have his mom take a look and see if she can figure out what he's saying.
O'Neill's plan was to set off a nuke and, best case scenario, irradiate the surrounding population.
No, O'Neill's plan was to set off a nuke and destroy the Stargate.
Yeah, so but that would have had the added effect of irradiating everybody on Abydos. Or
yeah,
at least
but he doesn't give a shit. He's suicidal. He's like, I don't care. That's why they reactivated him. They reactivated a deeply troubled and suicidal man who's distraught over the death of his son, that in the show is later expounded upon more, and it's his fault. And then you're like, yeah, that's sad, Jack, but also maybe you should put your guns in a gun safe. How'd your 13-year-old get a hold of him in the first place? No, it's like, I feel bad for you, Jack O'Neill. I do. But also, why was your gun where your 13-year-old could get it? Just hot take.
So Raw explains that he is going to send the bomb back through the gate with a shipment of the mineral that they mine here, which the Stargate is made of, which will increase the bomb's rate.
Naquita.
Yeah, they don't call it Naquita in the
No, but that's what it is. And again, it's more expounded upon in the
show. And so that's going to basically create a bomb that will blow up most of Colorado, I think.
Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah, he's like, I brought you back to life purely so that I could make you kill your friends in front of these people so that I can reestablish power.
Which, like, because he has no real major leverage over Daniel Jackson.
No, he doesn't. Like,
other
what
than
are
the
you going to
vague
do?
threat
Kill
to
me
Daniel
again?
Jackson's life.
Yeah, like, what are you going to do? Kill me again? Oh, big whoop. I've already died once today. You know what I mean? Which, by the way, and this comes up later, by the way, that sarcophagus, very effective at bringing dead people back to life. Takes like less than 5 minutes.
So, so naturally the plan goes horribly awry because Daniel's like, yeah, I'm just going to take this gun that you're giving me and use it on all of you.
Well, no, he sees that Skara and his boys have shown up with Jack and the army guy's weapons, so he knows he's got backup. So he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to take this shot. You know, maybe me and all of these native Abydonians will die, but also maybe we'll live. So he turns around and he shoots one of the guards with the staff weapon. And then all hell breaks loose and they run into the crowd. And Skara and Shari are like, oh, we gotta throw our outfits over them, which is really smart. They throw their own kind of desert outfits over top of them, so it's hard to pick them out from the crowd. And then they just run. And it's really good. Until Skara and Shari stop on top of a hill to stand there and watch and make sure that Daniel and Jack get away on their puppet, on their yak thing. Because they throw them on the yak thing and then they slap the yak thing and they're like, go, go! And the yak runs off. And then Shari and Skara get to the top of a dune and just stand there while people are running away around them and watch Daniel and Jack get pulled away on this hilarious puppet, and you're like, okay, but run. Don't worry about them. They're either going to get away or they're not. You guys should be running, not just standing there like a big old target.
So they head out and they find this cave where, well, previously Daniel had found the 6 symbols, but the 7th symbol was worn off.
Yeah, that was back when he magically became fluent. He found 6 symbols, but then the 7th one was worn off and broken, and he couldn't figure out what it was. So, of course, the army guys were like, this is your fault! Because, of course, that's his fault. So, they get to this cave, and the cave is like, well, they're brought to the cave by Skara and his bros. And they bring them to the cave, and Skara's just such a nice kid. Like, he's bringing everybody drinks, and, like, even though Jack yelled at him earlier when they were cleaning their guns, no, I want to save Jack, I love Jack, and I just want to be cool, like Jack O'Neill. And he's just such a nice kid. And then Jack freaks out when they have the guns around the fireplace. Do you remember that? Like,
yep.
They're all sitting there with guns, and I think it's Kowalski is like, well, they did pretty good, you know, Jack, and Jack freaks out. But Jack is being treated as too sensitive for not letting kids have guns. That's essentially what's putting on. He's like, no, don't touch those. And then the movie and the characters around him are all kind of like, calm down, man. They did a good job. It's like, yeah, sure, but these are also kids.
Carrying fully
automatic rifles.
Military weaponry.
Yeah, that they barely know how to use. They have no training, and he's portrayed as the one who's being too sensitive and fragile because he's like, no, don't touch these guns. No, these kids should not be touching these guns.
Well, Daniel figures out the 7 symbol because, was it Skara or the other kid that was writing on the wall, and he drew the symbol that was the pyramid with 3 suns around him, which is the first thing they see when they get off the planet and get outside and look back at the pyramid.
Yeah, it's his second house epiphany moment.
Yeah.
He's, like I said, he's a visual learner. The first was the picture of Orion, and now it's the picture of the pyramid and 3 suns. I guess he just needs things drawn out really crudely for him to be like, I know what it is now. Oh, we forgot to mention that the ribbon device shows up, too. The hand...
Oh yeah, the what?
Yeah, because he's torturing the guard who
cross-eyed shake machine.
Yes, the cross-eyed shake machine. He does go cross-eyed, and he does shake a lot.
But yeah, Daniel's a visual learner. He figures out the 7 symbol, and then he decides that what they need to do is they need to get back to the Stargate, fire it up, and get home. But at the same time, they need to stop that bomb that Ra is going to send through. Ra is specifically having a group of miners bring him shipments of the ore that he's going to use. So this is how they're going to infiltrate the pyramid.
Mm-hmm. So they infiltrate the pyramid. Kind of dicey, but they do it.
Well, they do it kind of because they get into the front door and then immediately one of the guards is like, okay, everybody's wearing hoods. I'm going to take their hoods off. And he does it the thing where he does one at a time until he gets to Jack. And then this is my note on why Kurt Russell's so freaking cool. Because he just smiles and then sticks the gun in the guy's belly and shoots him.
Yep.
I think he has a line there.
I'm sure he does. He's got a couple lines. Give my regards to King Tut.
Yeah, no, that's an action hero line. That's the line that, like, Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin just high-fived each other and took a break that day.
Yeah, they were like, oh, it's so good. Let's go do cocaine. I just assume everyone in Hollywood is on cocaine.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the drug that keeps that town flowing.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, so they're like, okay, we've managed to infiltrate the place, and they get to the Stargate, and they get to the bomb, and then a bad guy teleports down. Or no, he just comes out of nowhere, kind of.
Yeah, this is like the main bad guy.
Well, no, he
shoots Shari.
Yeah, he shoots Shari, and oh no, Shari's dead. If only there was some sort of device that was set up earlier in the movie that can bring people back from the dead.
From this exact wound.
Yeah, from this exact wound. So, yeah, she dies.
This is the point where O'Neill says that they have 7 minutes left.
Yes.
And then the rest of the movie is 15 minutes long.
Yes, and also, our sarcophagus takes less than 7 minutes to bring someone back from the dead. Because
it's like
it's less than 5. Because when we see the timer after Shari has been brought back from the dead and they kiss, which is gross, you see the timer and it says it still has like 2 minutes left.
So it took less than 5. So he must.
Hold on. He also had to get there, right? So like the teleporter does not show up directly at the sarcophagus.
So he used the microwave's high setting.
Yeah, exactly. It took basically 3 minutes. It had to take about 3 minutes.
What if she just comes back all wrong?
Well, I mean, she probably was. But also, we forgot to mention that earlier than that, she was talking about how she didn't tell her brother, because Daniel now knows the language. He's completely fluent. So he's like, a husband, because they say, like, oh, you're her husband. And he shows up and he asks her, hey, they're, married? And she goes, yeah, don't worry, I didn't tell them that you didn't want me. And then he just kisses her. Ick, gross, ew, ew, ew. Because this is a woman that was essentially gifted to him and who doesn't know how to read or write and who, like, you have at no point has she ever said, like, oh, but I would like to be with you, or I would like to get to know you. It's just, no, we're married now, and now I'm kissing you because you didn't tell your brother that I didn't want to have sex with you the first day that I met you. That's essentially what it is. He's like, no, I don't want to have sex with you right now because, you know, you just showed up in my tent. It's weird. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to make out with you, though, because even though you've not really given me any indication that you want
Well, it's the end of the action movie. He has to get the girl.
He has to get the girl. But yeah, so they're married, and it's gross and icky. And then she dies, and it's weird. And then she gets brought back in less than 3 minutes.
And Jack has a fist fight with the kind of main guard who's been bumming around next to Raw the entire film.
The guy with the eyeliner, yep.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Raw's stable of small boys, but...
Oh, yeah, that's really uncomfortable.
That actually is the intended...
Boys.
That's the... No, it's children, I think, but
it's a bunch of kids, and then he uses them as a human shield, and that's why Jack hesitates, and that's why Daniel
Roland Emmerich
shot.
Specifically said that those were in the kids were in the film to create a sense of unease around Raw, which is like, yeah, no shit. You're kind of like making him a weird pedophile.
Kids.
There's a little moment where he is trying to play chess with one of the boys while like the fighting is happening outside. Mm-hmm. Like literally the revolution is happening outside and he's trying to play chess and the boy just keeps peeking over the window and he just gets real angry and finally knocks the board over.
Yeah, he does do that. He like gets all physically intimidating with a little kid. It's weird. And you also see a lot of almost butt cheek on these kids. Okay, you could have at least like covered their butt.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a Bryan Singer film.
Oh, Bryan Singer. They decide they bring him back from death. Daniel comes back down at the exact same time that Jack O'Neill has the big dumb guard guy pinned
underneath the transport pad.
Underneath the transporter rings. So his head gets transported up, which you like never see anything cool like that in the show later, but it's one of the few gory moments of the movie where you see his severed head just for a second sitting there.
Yeah, but you don't even really see any blood.
I wrote a note, that's a pretty good severed head. Mm-hmm. And Daniel and Sharae come down at the same time that they teleport that guy's head up. Daniel like rushes over to where Jack is trying to disable the bomb. He's like, oh, I gotta stop it because we're all gonna die.
Well, outside too, there's like the big fight happening between the Abadosians and the two guards in the flying ship. And then Kowalski's just like, oh, we surrender. And the two guards are immediately like, well, time to park these ships and get out and slowly walk on foot.
Yeah, and not just blow them up from the air. But also, before that, the dumb guy died.
Yeah, there's so many of like,
there's this dumb moments. Guy extra that they use. I think he had like maybe 2 or 3 lines that they used that was part of Scar's little group. And he's got these really thick unibrow eyebrows.
He's effectively like that one dead Ewok in Jedi.
Yes, yeah, basically. Like they just make him look really stupid, and I don't know if it's so you feel less bad when he dies or more bad, but like he dies when he's trying to run from the cover of the pyramid to his group. And after he dies is when Kowalski's like, okay, I'm just going to surrender. So it's like, why don't you just like blow these people up from the air to make like a statement? But no, they park their ships and they go down there. And then at that moment, everybody, all of the tribe has decided that they're going to revolt and screw these guys.
Gandalf has come from the west to save us.
Yeah, so the guy from the Mummy shows up with the rest of the tribe and they just swarm these guards, and it's really funny because you're just watching these guards get swarmed by all these villagers and they're like shooting at them and they're trying to hit them with their staff weapons, and you're like, yeah, that'll work against hundreds of people swarming you. Yeah, 1 against hundreds. That's gonna work out real well for you.
So Raw is getting the fuck out of there. His
Raw's like, fuck this shit, leaving. I'm out.
Which his spaceship kind of reminds me of the Tyrell headquarters building from Blade Runner, because they're both very pyramid shaped and they both do that thing where the top kind of splits open to reveal shafts of light inside. Mm-hmm. But he's leaving. He's getting the fuck out of there. So he's in the upper atmosphere at this point, which those ships apparently don't move that fast.
No. Apparently they move at like a snail's pace.
And James Spader has a really smart idea. Jackson does, where he's going to beam up the bomb to Ra's ship. Mm-hmm. Now, they teased this a couple of times before, and this is something that is much different in the show, like, because they don't really ever hint at the nature of the Gould character of Ra in this movie. They kind of imply that he's more of like a gray alien looking creature that like shapeshifted or stole the body of a young boy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the show, they're giant worms.
Yep. Well, they're like eels. They're like spiky space eels.
Yeah.
Because the way they wiggle is more like eels than worms. Because they're more like, they like lash around and it's really gross and weird. I would say they're more like space eels.
But not Ra. Ra looks like a big gray alien.
Yep.
He looks like one of the aliens from Fire in the Sky.
No, he literally looks like an Asgardian from the show. He's got big eyes, gray skin. He looks like an Asgardian.
So like he must have like formerly inhabited an Asgardian or something?
Maybe. That's possible.
But that doesn't really like... So there's some discrepancies between the show and the movie. But anyway, Ra tries to stop the bomb from exploding. He can't. The big red timer ticks down to 1 because, of course, this is a third act in an action movie in the 90s. So we need a giant ticking red clock. And the bomb explodes, destroying Ra and all of those young children he also had on the ship, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye, slaves. I'll see you later. You don't really matter.
Do you know what they needed?
Child slaves.
They needed one fucking scene between when the guy from The Mummy, his team shows up, and before Ra takes off, of just those children just like running out the front door.
Yeah, that would be nice. But no.
You didn't really need that was one establishing shot you would have needed to say, hey, maybe all those children didn't horribly die.
Oh, also, I'm sure that a nuke in the upper atmosphere of your planet has 0 ill effects. I'm sure it doesn't affect anything.
Depends on how far away it was, but yeah,
it wasn't that far away.
They all get horrible cancer like a year later.
Yeah, like it wasn't that far away. And then all the kids, all of Skara's gang salute Jack O'Neill. Even though they have no idea what that means. They just know that one of his army buddies did it to him because he's in charge. And they just do it, and he does it back. There's like a close-up on Skara's face, and you can see the guy right next to him, and he's got completely wrong fingers, and it's like, oh, that's cute, but also, you guys don't know what that means.
Yeah. And then we kind of just wrap everything up real quick, you know?
That's basically the last 3 minutes of the movie now is, so Daniel's like, I'm going to stay here with my arranged wife.
Which at this point, I realize that Daniel Jackson is the exact same character as Milo from Atlantis, The Lost Empire, which is essentially plays just like a cartoon remake of Stargate.
It basically is, yes, but it's also amazing, and I love it, and the aesthetics are really pretty, and I don't know why it didn't get more attention, because I really felt like it deserved it. But that's not what this podcast is about. No, and it's funny, too, because it's like, yeah, why would he go back? He's been laughed out of the scientific community.
He's got no apartment anymore.
And this project is definitely shut down now. So it's not like he has a job waiting for him when he goes back. So yeah, why would he? It's the U.S. government.
There's a chance he might be interned or shot.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, why would he go back? And then I love how Jack's like, are you sure you don't want to come back? And yeah, man, you've read my dossier. I'm sure. Why are you even asking me that question? But yeah, so Daniel's like, I'm going to stay here with my arranged wife and her family, and I'm going to live here forever now. And then he's like, are you going to be okay? And Jack, I think I will be, because something happened, I guess, that made him want to live.
Oh yeah, he learned that, that kids can use guns effectively.
Is that his arc? I really don't...
Yeah, he started off the arc as, like, really unconfident in the firearm abilities of children because of the accident involving his son. And at the end of the movie, he's like, no, kids can fire guns.
And now I want to live again. Because, like, he has a whole speech when Daniel first finds out about the bomb. Because that's, like, a big reveal. Well, not really a big reveal, because we know about it. But when Daniel reveals the bomb to his buddies... And Jack's like, yeah, no, I'm still setting off that bomb. Daniel's like, your men don't want to die. These people don't want to die. I don't want to die. Maybe you should think about that and see if you can find something to live for. And then he just does. I guess he bonds with Skara. It's really much better done in the show, because in the show, like, yeah, sure, we're looking for Shari or Share or however her name's pronounced now, but we're also looking for Skara. Jack really cares about Skara, and you can tell that he has a lot of feelings for this kid, where he's like, I like this kid, I don't want anything bad to happen to him, he reminds me of my kid. So they do that really well in the show, but in the movie, it just kind of... He's like, no, I've got stuff to live for now. I'm fine. It's okay. Like, I don't see any of that character growth that I feel you might kind of need besides two bonding scenes.
That's because he didn't have a character.
No.
Normally, Kurt Russell is very charismatic, very... Even when he's playing someone like a Snake Plissken, he's bringing something to that role. But this time, I just get nothing from him. He's just like a wood plank.
And then it's the end of the movie. It ends on the wormhole Stargate sequence. And that's the end of the movie. And then the song comes in. And then my feelings hit. And I'm like, da-da-da-da. And I'm all excited. But, like, it's still... That's the end of the movie. That's it. It's like, wow, you guys really wrapped that up quick. No... shot of them questioning Jack afterwards, like Daniel.
Nah, you want to end on a high note, which is like the highest note in your movie is your gate sequence. So, but
hey, that's mean. Anyway, we've reached the end of the movie. It even says the end, and so I wrote down the end in all caps. So it is the end of the movie. Chris, what did you think of Stargate the movie from 1994, starring Kurt Russell and
Well,
James
I watched
Spader?
it a lot when I was a kid. Like, it was one of those movies we had on VHS, so you just kind of tended to watch it over and over again, but it doesn't hold up. The second act is very, very bloated and draggy. There's no real spectacle to it anymore. It just looks cheap. Like, when at the time it came out, they kind of were able to hide around the computer effects and, really lean on some of the sets. But I don't know. If you're a Stargate completist, or even if you just want to get into the Stargate franchise, you're probably better off starting with the first episode of the show, which does a better job explaining what happened. Do you recommend this movie?
Yes, I recommend this movie. I know. It's not... And I'm not even saying it's, like, a great movie. But I think it's worth watching this movie. Not the extended cut, I don't think. I think you can basically just watch the regular cut of the movie. And then you see, like, oh, there's the ribbon device. And, oh, there's the sarcophagus. And all these, like, bits of Gwalwood technology that come back later.
Well, would you recommend it to someone who had never and has no intention of watching the television show?
No.
If you're just like, here's a movie to watch?
No, not as like an individual movie to watch. But like if you're a person who's like, I'm really interested in this 7 seasons of an excellent TV show, what do you think? Should I start with the movie? Then I'd say, yeah, start with the movie. I would give them the disclaimer, it's not that great of a movie. But, yeah, watch the movie. Because I remember watching the first one with you and being like, yeah, this is helped by having seen the movie. And not to mention, I love, like, all the little weird bits of tech that they made up for this movie. I love the set design. I love the puppet. I love the puppet so much. I think the movie's worth it just for the puppet. I like that... even though it's got, like, some problematic 90s tropes, it also has, like, a really cute moment between this kid and Kurt Russell, where Kurt Russell's like, yeah, no cigarettes, and don't taste that good, and, like, you see them bonding a little bit, and, like, those little moments are worth it, and I think that the movie is ultimately worthwhile if you're a Stargate head.
So, a lukewarm recommendation.
It's not lukewarm, it's a recommendation. It's just not something that I would force upon anyone who wasn't interested in the show. Because then it's like, here, watch this thing. Oh, but it gets way better later in the show that you're not going to watch.
So that brings us to a conclusion on Stargate 1994, directed by Roland Emmerich.
Did we have a rating system last time? We did.
Yeah. Should we start rating episodes based on...
Let's do an easy rating where it's
like a 1 to 5?
5, but let's just do Stargates.
With 5 being great and 1 being terrible?
It's one chevron to 7 chevrons. No, we can just do 1 to 5. I would give this like 2, maybe
I would give
3,
this a 2.
Maybe a 3 for the pure like aesthetic of it. Like I really like the aesthetic.
Yeah, the show reaches much greater heights.
Yeah, and the show is definitely way better, 110%. I'm not even gonna argue that. I mean, O'Neill is funny and charming, and you like him instead of just being kind of a dickbag. James Spader. Clearly, he did okay in this movie, but, like, Daniel is just also kind of a douche. Like, whereas Daniel in the show comes off as, like, yeah, maybe he knows more than you, but he's not going to rub it in your face.
Well, speaking of the show, that brings us to next episode of Stargating. We are going to be We are going to be talking about episode 1 and 2 of Stargate SG-1, Children of the Gods.
Oh, yeah, it's a two-parter. Right. We're going to do the two-parter with Teal'c.
Yep.
My bro, Teal'c.
Yeah. So, until next time, I've been Chris.
I am Tamara.
And thank you for Stargating with us.